Offensive tackle Jordan Seaton has canceled his official visit to Oklahoma this weekend. Will visit Tennessee instead. That according to Josh Newberg. Seaton also plans to take an official visit with the Vols later this fall. You ask if this was a big deal. I will say this is a monster deal. I think it is absolutely huge. And I think the fact that you would take an unofficial instead of an official to any school is a big, big deal, especially South Carolina. This isn't Georgia, which sometimes you'll see prospects change their plans because of premier games. So let's say Tennessee, Alabama last year, I could see somebody doing this and rescheduling their official visit to Oklahoma. But I think Tennessee is in good with another offensive lineman, and they're in good with a lot of offensive linemen, which I want to get to. How big of a deal is this, do you believe, for Tennessee in the recruiting world, Caleb Calhoun?
I'm with you. I think this is a huge deal. And you're right. People would bring up that, it's because it's not like this is the Tennessee Alabama game that they're canceling Oklahoma Iowa State for. It's this Tennessee South Carolina game, which is a big deal from the perspective of the two schools, but it's not a game that stops the national college football world. You know what I mean? So he's doing this for an unofficial visit. And for the record, Jordan Seaton tweeted out in response an interesting line, which is he said, "The only orange I like," when he mentioned.
Oh.
So now I know Oklahoma's not orange, but that eliminates a lot of.
But it's made up of, if you go back to your combination of colors in elementary school, it's kind of made up of red. Orange is made up of what? Red and yellow. So maybe sort of. No, I'm reaching.
I learned that from watching Barney. Okay, sorry.
Okay, so let's take a look at this for a second. I want you to break down and pull up all the schools he's looking at. And I know you know off the top of your head. But first, let's take a look at Tennessee's class, okay? Because I want to use this as a backdrop. Andre Carrick didn't work, okay? Andre Carrick as a transfer to the SEC did not work. I know he came from Texas. It didn't work. Was he a cast-off? Not willing to go that far, but it hasn't worked. You're going to have to be good on the offensive line through high school recruiting, not the transfer portal. I believe that, and I don't believe John Campbell's been great either. I believe that more than any other position. So look at where Tennessee stands right now, this visit notwithstanding. Bennett Warren, 4-star offensive tackle out of Texas, 6'7.5", 330 pounds. Those are kids that are coming out of college, coming out of high school, ready to play in college physically. As far as the other ones that Tennessee has, Max Anderson, an offensive tackle, again, Texas, 4-star, Frisco, Texas. Those are 2 4-star offensive linemen that Tennessee has lined up. If you add this young man to the mix, boy, you've got something special brewing on your offensive line. And as somebody told me, within Tennessee's football program, you need the guys like Cade Mays that step on campus, and he was ready to play at Georgia. He was ready to play when he transferred to Tennessee. The guy was ready to play in high school. Those are the guys you need. You don't need the guys, no offense, Ollie Lane. You don't need the guys that you have to grow into players. Now, can you take an occasional Cooper Mays who has to gain weight before he's ready because he plays with tenacity? Absolutely. And look what he's become, an all-SEC player. But when I look at this kind of move by this young man who's willing to go to Tennessee, I think it says a couple of things. I think it says that Tennessee's coaches are saying, you got a chance to play, and you got a chance to play right away because this offensive line is struggling. Who all else is he looking at? Please hit the like and subscribe button. We love it when people are waiting there in the morning. Absolutely appreciate you beyond words. Be sure and support our sponsors. And this recruiting update is brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Real estate experts, over 4 decades combined experience. Again, they're right below. Support our sponsors, best prices and best service. It's that simple. If you go with anybody but Andy Mason in Knoxville, you're crazy. All right. As a matter of fact, our own Tracy Morgan would say, oh, no, he wouldn't. He would say this.
That's crazy.
Okay. So go with AndyMasonRealEstate.com. All right, Caleb, tell me about this young man that is going to be taking his unofficial to Tennessee, not for the Alabama game, not for the Georgia game, but for the South Carolina game. I think it's monstrous news out of the chute.
Yes, particularly versus Oklahoma. Now, I'm going to give a caveat here. His most recent list of top schools included 14 schools. Only 4 of them have home games this weekend. So, bit of a drop-off. So, one of them is Oklahoma has a home game. He spurned them for an unofficial visit to Tennessee. The other one is Colorado and USC. Now, again, Dion, we've talked about the force he is on the recruiting trail. And so you would think this would be a game to go take an unofficial visit to Colorado. USC coming to town, and he's still choosing Tennessee, South Carolina. I mean, that's kind of a big deal. And the other one, and this is just a local factor, he's from D.C., Maryland is playing Indiana at home right up the road this week, and Maryland's in his top 14 too. He's not going to Maryland, Indiana either.
He's on Maryland. Maryland's on the list because he's nearby.
Probably so. You're right. Mike Locksley has done a good job at Maryland of like more than other coaches getting local talent. Remember Dwayne Haskins, rest in peace, had committed to Mike Locksley at Maryland in 2015 before Locksley left. So kind of an interesting connection he has there.
Maryland was going to make a push with Under Armour money until they realized that Under Armour money was about 1/100th of Nike money. And Nike,
that was their mistake.
Yeah,
and they were trying to be the Oregon of the East.
Right, and it's not just Oregon. Tennessee is a Nike school, so you would rather be tied into Nike than Under Armour. Sorry, and I know that because I covered that time for ESPN when Under Armour tried to make a strong push and become the pseudo or next Nike. So that obviously didn't happen. But continue with your breakdown of this young man.
Yeah, so those are the 4: Oklahoma, Maryland, Colorado, and Tennessee that are in his top 14 that have home games this weekend. Spurning Colorado and Oklahoma for Tennessee to go to an unofficial visit to Tennessee is a big deal. And that's not a locational thing because, yes, DC is closer to Tennessee than Colorado. But let's be honest, Dave, on these unofficial visits, someone's probably still flying you out, aren't they?
Well, yeah, somebody's flying you out. Here's the other thing to remember. And yeah, somebody's flying you out, or they're finding the absolute cheapest tickets, or they're giving you points or something and that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, you're getting flown out. I think he's pulling out the Jordan Seaton credit card and paying for his own trip. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think you should be able to take unlimited official visits, quite personally, because it's the biggest decision in your life. And I can tell you, if let's just say 10.79 the game in Los Angeles and 104.5 in Houston, and 7:90 a.m. in St. Louis wanted to hire me, there wouldn't be a limitation of 5 visits that I could take. I would be able to go in an open market society and take whichever visits I wanted to take. So they should be able to fly him out. And if they're finding ways around it, good for Tennessee, good for any school, because it's good for the prospects. I'll always side with the prospects. But I think this is monster. And this is news that just broke right before we went on the air. So I think it's huge. Good eye by you. But Tennessee is going to have to build its offensive line through high school recruiting. I was talking to somebody within the program, and they talked about losing Darnell Wright, Jeremiah Crawford from last year. And then they talked about the potential.
No, they still have Jeremiah Crawford. You mean Jerome Carvin?
Jerome Carvin, excuse me. And it's the JCs that mix me up, and not Jesus Christ, as Pat McAfee.
My initials are JC too, so you know.
Yes. Okay. So, and they lose those guys, so they're going to lose Cooper Mays theoretically. Now he does have another year left. But when I was having this conversation in the offseason, you lose a Cooper Mays because he wanted to go to the NFL. We don't know what's going to happen with the injury, whether or not he might come back for another year. He does have another year of eligibility. So who else would you lose from this offensive line this year?
You could lose. Don't you lose Jeremiah Crawford? I mean, again, it's so confusing with COVID. So Jeremiah Crawford, Cooper Mays, as far as starting, I mean, that's maybe Javonte Spraggins, but he could be back. Mays and Spraggins, I think, could both be back next year if they want to. I don't know if Spraggins should. Look, I think Javonte Spraggins could start in the NFL tomorrow. If you
Here's
ask me.
the quote that somebody gave me from within the program. 2024 on the offensive line is when it gets dicey, because the guys that you've gone after, like Addison Nichols, and I don't want to use him as a target, but they have not developed to where they need to be. And you try to fill those holes with the Andre Carriggs and the John Campbells of the world. Mixed results on John Campbell, bad results on Andre Carrick, who did not at all grade well from what I'm told. And just so you know, this isn't from Cooper Mace, okay? So everybody thinks that everything we get is from Cooper and Jacob. I know how to work sources, and it's not from them. So just so you know. But they said this quote, 2024, that's when it gets dicey. You cannot depend on the transfer portal on the offensive line. Maybe at other positions, we'll see. I've got my question marks about that too, now that we've seen Dante Thornton. But on the offensive line in particular, Caleb, you've got to have guys progress that you bring up through the system. You better not have an offensive line that's dependent on 2 or 3 transfer portal guys, because it ain't going to work.
Yes, and here's the big point with the transfer portal. You and John Adams brought this up Tuesday, and I've come around to y'all. I want to add a caveat, but with the transfer portal, one, you still have to scout talent, because your best transfer portal guys are really good players at smaller schools that were just misevaluated on the recruiting trail and deserve a shot at a higher program. That's clearly where you get the best transfer portal players. The other situation for transfer portal players, now this is in general, there are exceptions. Hendon Hooker was an exception to everything I'm saying. But the other type of transfer portal player is they're at a big school, but they would like to play as freshmen or sophomores. They see a chance to play early at another school, not that they got beat out. Like, we're looking at Andre Carrick and Dante Thornton. They weren't waiting their turn at Oregon and Texas. They just got beat out for their jobs. I mean, that's just that simple.
And actually, Dante Thornton was waiting out his turn, and a player ahead of him got injured, is why he got to play. But still, he wasn't overly effective. He had like 250 yards and a touchdown. Maybe we're part of the problem in overhyping Dante Thornton, but I think your transfer rate, I've said this in high school recruiting, guys. I think that your success rate in high school football recruiting is always 50%. You go back and look at almost any class, there are aberrations like Lane Kiffin's 2009 class that was a bunch of felons. But you look at pretty much any class, 12 out of 25, 12 to 14 are contributors. The other dudes aren't. And it's almost by the board. I'm to the point, now I don't have enough of a track record. I want to continue to see this, but I'm to the point where I think the transfer portal might be 25-75. 25% are successful, 75% aren't. I'm about
which makes it totally different from like the free agent market in the NFL, because I feel like high profile free agents are the 75-25, honestly. And this is where it's different. The free agent market and the transfer portal, it's not that their contract is up at a school and they're looking for a big deal. It's that they couldn't get the playing time they wanted at the school. That still applies even in the age of NIL. And that's what we're kind of seeing. And by the way, you talked about it with John Calipari saying, what did he said, tripping over nickels, chasing dollars,
chasing millions. Like chasing millions.
Yes. Think about this for a minute. If your North Star is just the NIL checks in college and not your NFL potential, you may not be as dedicated to work hard for your NFL draft slot.
Thank you. You remember the saying used to be probably when you were young, but definitely when I was young, if I had $1 million at 18 and I invested it properly, I would never have to work again. Sorry, inflation, kids, $1 million ain't what it used to be. I mean, it's a good chunk of cash, and you and I aren't going to turn it down, but we're probably still going to come to work on Monday, right?
Yeah, exactly. I would put that $1 million away. I'd pay off my debts and put it away. I've thought about this in my head a lot. I'm like, okay, student loan debts here, debts there, cover these things, and then put the rest away and don't touch it.
Yeah, it's like me when when I think about, man, what am I going to do when I win the lottery? Guess how many lottery tickets I bought in my lifetime?
How many?
0. I'm not going to win the lottery because I don't buy them. But I do appreciate those that do, because it pays for our children's education.